Hello everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. I am of course going to be talking about the worst and my least favorite books that I read in 2020, but I'm doing a bit of a twist on that. So I got this idea actually from Kayla from Books and Lala. I'm going to link her video up in the cards above. She tier ranked all of her least favorite books of the year. She used tiers that are based on TikToks and memes. I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm using tiers based off of some of my favorite Vines. Vine was one of the best social media platforms ever invented in my opinion. I'm still devastated that it is no longer a thing. So I thought that I would pay tribute to one of the best things that has ever happened in our generation by doing this tier ranking. Also, if you want more Vine content from me, I actually did a Vine book tag. I want to say a couple of years ago where I made up some prompts based off of my favorite Vines, but I also took prompts from the original creator of that tag. So I'm gonna link that up in the cards above as well. It's such a fun time. I wish that more people would watch it. So yeah, I'm really excited to do this video, but like I'm a little weary because I'm also talking about books that I didn't like, unfortunately, but I'm hoping that this tier ranking will make it more fun to talk about these books. All right guys, here we are with my tier maker list. Also, I apologize for the glare coming from my glasses and the ring light, but I need to be wearing my glasses when looking at my laptop. So here we are. Here are all of the books. And here is the tier list. So I'm already laughing thinking about these Vines. Okay, so the top list is You're Not My Dad.
What?
You're not my dad! You also hear something! Ugly ass fucking.
And this tier is going to be books that straight up made me angry, essentially. Then we have A Potato Flew Around My Room.
A potato flew around my room before you came.
Which this is going to be books that started off really well for me, but quickly went downhill for some reason. Then we have Why?
Why?
Which this is more books that I'm like exasperated by. I'm not necessarily angry about, but the author maybe made some choices in the writing or in the plot that I just don't get and I feel very passionately about, but at the same time I'm not like angry about it, if that makes sense. Then we have I've Never Been to Uvu Javar.
Who's the hottest Uber driver you've ever had?
I never went to Uvu Javar.
Which these are just books that I didn't understand. I don't understand for whatever reason. Then we have Okay.
Hi.
Okay.
Which are books that were just okay or I was bored by, anything like that. Books that I just feel very meh about. And the last tier we have is Old Woman Trying to Get on the Bus. These are going to be books that I wanted to love and I wanted to hop on the bandwagon for, but the bandwagon just drove away without me and I just ended up not loving these books. So I hope that explains my thinking behind these tiers. So without further ado, let's just get into it. Here are all the books. I think I have about like 20 to 21 books on this list. These are all books that I either hated for some reason or was just severely disappointed by, or gave these books 2 stars because I was very bored or felt meh or like whatever. So we'll get into the specifics as we go on. So first book we have here is All Scott and Bothered by Kerrigan Byrne. This is book 2 in her most recent historical romance companion series. I ended up giving this book 3 stars. I think I'm gonna just put this in the okay tier, because at the end of the day, I really do feel meh about this book. I was excited about the fact that we had a plus-sized, tall, bookish heroine. If that doesn't describe me, I don't know what does. But the romance, there was just like way too much angst and back and forth between the 2 main characters. Like it was just like too much and I was annoyed. So I mean, I'm just gonna put it in the okay tier. Then we have The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. I think I'm gonna put this in the why category. This is not a book that makes me angry, but I just don't really get the choices that Suzanne Collins made. First of all, you know, if you don't know, this is a prequel to the Hunger Games trilogy. We're following Coriolanus Snow and him basically as a teenager, and this is the 10th annual Hunger Games. And I don't know, the story just went in a very odd direction, and I know I'm not the only one that feels this way. I know a lot of us were very disappointed by this book. I just think that she could have done so much more with this opportunity of adding more to the Hunger Games world. This book ended up getting pretty boring at times, and it was just an odd story to tell. With villain origin stories, first of all, I want them to be more exciting. I want to see the villain, the main character, truly embrace the darkness and really go down that path. And unfortunately, this book like ends with the beginning of that trajectory for Snow. It was just such a weird, I don't know, just so weird. So I'm not angry about it, but I am just like, why? Why did you do this, Suzanne? Why? Next we have Beach Read by Emily Henry. I am putting this in the Old Woman Trying to Get on the Bus. This is a book that I really wanted to love, guys. Like, I assumed I was going to love this as much as everybody else does. Like, everybody has been giving this 5 stars. A lot of people have been putting this in their top 10 books of the year, top 10 romances of the year. So I thought I was going to love this as well. At the end of the day, I just didn't emotionally connect to the 2 main characters as much as everybody else has. Then we have the Book of Essie, and I cannot remember who this author is. I can't remember. It's like Megan Weir or something like that. I'm gonna put this in a potato flew around my room because I was really enjoying, especially like the first half. Like, I was gonna probably give it like a solid 4 star. This is about our main character, Essie. She is a part of this family that's very much like the Duggars and, you know, 19 Kids and Counting. And there is a scandal that happens. She ends up becoming pregnant, but she doesn't have a boyfriend. Like, nobody knows who made her pregnant, so that's kind of the whole catalyst for the story. But I think at the end of the day, this author was just trying to do too much in too little page time. Like, this book is only 300 pages, and there were just way too many issues that she was trying to incorporate in this book. So for me, it went downhill, and I ended up giving this 2 stars, and it was my very first read of 2020. So that definitely wasn't a good sign for the year to come. Next, we have The King of Bourbon Street by Thea DeSalle. I'm gonna put this in You're Not My Dad. This book made me angry. So this is an adult romance. It is a BDSM romance, and we have a main character who's bisexual. I was excited about this because I know that Chelsea from Chelsea Darling Reads loves this book. I think this is her top favorite smutty romance ever, and it takes place in New Orleans. It's part of a 3-book series, I think, that takes place in New Orleans. So I was excited because I'm from the New Orleans area. I was pumped. Also, it is about a plus-sized heroine. Again, I was excited. Let me tell you some things that I feel like the author did wrong. First of all, the way our hero would think about our heroine, the plus-sized heroine that I mentioned earlier, he used some very cringy words such as squishy, and he described her as a cupcake. And I was like, what? Why? Why are we doing this? What? Like, I hate that. I hate that language. Also, like I said, this takes place in New Orleans, but they kept referring to the trolley when, if you've ever visited New Orleans, you would know that it's called a streetcar, not a trolley. Nobody from here calls it a trolley. And I did end up DNFing this at like the 44% mark. This is one of only like 2 books that I DNF'd that I'm gonna mention in this video. I just like wasn't feeling the chemistry between the 2 main characters, and I just wasn't really feeling the story in general. So like every time a sex scene would come up, I was just bored, which is not how you want to feel when reading a smutty romance. So just a lot of things annoyed me about this. So like, yes, You're Not My Dad. Next we have A Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics by Olivia Waite. I'm also putting this in a potato flew around my room. This is book 1 in a historical romance series by Olivia Waite, and this is about 2 women, so it's a sapphic historical romance. I was so excited about this book because a lot of people that I follow were giving this 5 stars, and this is about these 2 women. One of them is a countess, and one of them is this girl that is really into scientific things, and I think astronomy. And so she's trying to translate this book that's in French into English so that it can be published for English audiences. This countess is essentially funding that endeavor, and they fall in love along the way. And I was adoring the first like 25 to 30% of this book. You could really feel the chemistry between these 2 characters. I thought it was a gorgeous romance. but they got together really quickly. Like I said, within like the 25 to 30% mark, they were together, they were having sex, they were in, you know, a committed relationship with one another. And the rest of the book was centered on the plot line with her translating this book and interacting with the scientific community. And it was just like, no, I don't want to read a romance novel and then it not be about the romance. So it definitely went downhill for me. So I did DNF this at like the 57% mark because I just got really bored. Then we have Cowboy Come Home by Carly Bloom. I'm just gonna put this in the okay category. I gave this 2 stars because I was just so bored. This is such a meh book, which is unfortunate because I really enjoyed the first book, which was, I want to say, Big Bad Cowboy. So like this series is like fairy tale retellings, but told in a contemporary cowboy romance setting, right? And I can't even tell you what fairy tale this book was based off of because I just didn't care. So next, I'm actually going to talk about Escaping from Houdini first because Capturing the Devil is the sequel to Escaping from Houdini. So these are books 3 and 4 of the Stalking Jack the Ripper series by Carrie Maniscalco. And so this Escaping from Houdini is the 3rd book. I think I'm gonna put this in You're Not My Dad because this book really did make me angry in a lot of ways. First of all, the way that Audrey Rose was treating Thomas. So like Audrey Rose and Thomas are the 2 main characters. They are in love with each other basically the entire series. This is a YA murder mystery series essentially. And so in this installment, they're like on a cruise ship and there's all kinds of murders going on. And then Audrey Rose is flirting with this other man when her and Thomas are definitely in a committed relationship. Yeah, I just hated the way she was treating him, but at the same time, Thomas was being a really good sport about it. Like he definitely could have gotten more jealous, but he is a very self-aware character. He's just very aware if he has any negative emotions at all. So he was definitely like checking his jealousy and checking his emotions throughout. But yeah, like Audrey Rose was really pissing me off. Also, I just feel like the premise for this book was so good and Carrie just did not deliver in my opinion. I got bored so much throughout this book. It was just so slow paced and yeah, I'm just like so frustrated when I think about this book. So then let's talk about Capturing the Devil, which is the 4th and final book of this series. I think I'm just gonna put this in okay. As much as I loved that this book focused a lot on the romance between Thomas and Audrey Rose, a lot of everything else was just boring. Also, the murderer was like super easy to guess. I mean, that's actually a critique that I have of this whole series, is that the murderers were like way too easy to guess, except for the 2nd book, Hunting Prince Dracula. And that was my favorite book of the series actually. But yeah, this was just okay. Very much a blah ending to the series as a whole. Yeah, just overall disappointed. All right, next we have The Duke Effect by Sophie Jordan. I think I'm gonna put this in the Y category because this book actually did exasperate me a lot. So this is book 7 in Sophie Jordan's Rogue File series, which is a historical romance series. I was pumped for this book because I had read the other 2 books in this sort of trilogy within this series that centers around these 3 sisters, and Nora, who is the youngest sister, the sister that this book centers around, she was like the quirkiest. She's a scientist. I don't know, I was just excited because her character was so dynamic in the other 2 books. And then in this, I don't know, I just feel like Sophie Jordan could have done so much more with her character and her romance with this man that she was actually writing letters to under her dead father's name, essentially. So the man shows up expecting to meet Nora's father, but she's like, oh, he's been dead for a while and I've been writing to you instead. So the premise I thought was going to be really cute and fun. Definitely reminds me of Tessa Dare's When a Scot Ties the Knot. I just wanted so much more for Nora. I love her character so much and I just, I wanted her romance to be amazing. I wanted this to be like the best book of the trilogy and it ended up being the worst. Next we have An Enchantment of Ravens by Margaret Rogerson. I think I'm gonna put this in a potato flu around my room because this was another one. First of all, I went into this expecting to love it because I had seen a lot of people give this like 4 or 5 stars. The cover is stunning. I do judge books by their cover. Sorry, not sorry. So this centers around a human, I think. Yes. And she's a very famous artist within their entire like fairy realm community. And so she paints a portrait of the fairy prince, but she mistakenly paints emotion, like human emotion in his eyes, and that's a very like embarrassing thing for Faye to have. You know, they don't want to be associated with humans at all. So the plot goes on from there. I was enjoying this for the most part, but then like the second half like really went downhill for me. It just, I don't know, the pacing got really slow. I wasn't caring about what was happening. Then we have The Gilded Wolves by Roshani Chokshi. This is definitely going into I've never been to Uvu Jabber. I did not understand this book at all. Oh my goodness. First of all, yes, I was enjoying the first half. This is a YA fantasy series. I don't even know how to explain the plot to you guys. I really don't. I was so confused. It took me a while to like even get into the story at the beginning, but once I understood what was going on, I don't know, there's like very complicated mathematical and magical things going on like in the plot and in the world. And then in the second half, like specifically the last 25% when we got to like the big climax of the story, I just didn't know what was going on and I just didn't care. I was like, at that point, I was just listening to the audiobook to get to the end. I have no desire to read The Silvered Serpents, which is the second book. The only reason why I even read this book was because I got an e-arc for the sequel, and it just, girl, I was so confused. Like, this book legit made me feel like an idiot. All right, oh no. Next we have In Bed with a Highlander by Maya Banks. Straight into You're Not My Dad. This book made me so angry. So angry. Oh my goodness. This was yet another book that I was really excited to go into. I was reading this as a part of the historical romance readathon back in March of 2020. This is a book that Jess from Peace Love Books and quite a few other romance booktubers really love. And so I was excited about this. Also, this does take place during like medieval times in Scotland. Basically, this woman, Marin, she has this really valuable plot of land. And so all of these different clansmen are trying to marry her so that they can get the land for themselves. So there's this really awful dude that's trying to marry her. I think he kidnapped her, but she escaped to this other keep, this other clan. And so this other guy, Ewan, I think is his name, ends up marrying her. And what really pissed me off is the scene of the consummation of their marriage. So essentially they get married and like right away, the bad guy is coming to take her back with him, to kidnap her again and try to marry her himself. And so if they don't consummate the marriage, like it won't be official, it won't be real. And so Ewan like pretty much drags Marin to their bedroom and kind of brutally consummates the marriage, takes her virginity, however you want to word it. You can't tell me that this wasn't assault because she was crying. I'm pretty sure she said stop numerous times, but because Ewan was like really stressed out about this dude coming to get her, he like just didn't care. It's like a literal bodice ripper, like he literally like rips her dress off. Then he like quickly leaves, like takes their bed sheet away to prove that they consummated the marriage because there's blood on the bed sheet. Sorry to like get kind of graphic, but I'm trying to explain to you guys why I hated this so much. He takes the bed sheet away, leaves her sobbing, visually upset, cries herself to sleep. Then the next day, the next morning, they wake up and he does feel like unsettled a little bit about how they consummated the marriage, but he never apologizes, never genuinely apologizes. Then I was so pissed at Marin too, because she felt the need to like go get advice from the other women in the clan on how to please Ewan in bed. And I was like, no, bitch, no, like he should be castrated. He shouldn't, no, he doesn't deserve pleasure. Like, no, I was just, this book makes me so mad, so mad. So I DNF'd this at like the 44% mark because I just couldn't do it anymore, guys. Like my mental health was suffering because of this book. I do not want to read a rape scene in a romance novel where it's played off as if it's okay. I don't care, like don't tell me that it should be okay because this takes place during medieval times. It's never okay. I don't want to read about that when I'm reading a romance novel at the end of the day. Like, don't at me, don't fight me on this. All right, next is Lovely War by Julie Berry. I think I'm gonna put this in Y because the premise for this was so good. So good. It's basically a YA historical fiction where like the main characters, one of them is Aphrodite, the goddess of love. We also have like Ares, the god of war. We have Apollo, who is like the god of music and a lot of other different things. We have Hades, the god of death, the god of like dead people. And so basically Aphrodite is telling the story of these two different couples during World War I. This fell so flat for me because the main couple that she talks about, James and Hazel, I think, was that their name? I don't even remember at this point, but there's like two couples. One of them is much more major than the other one. So the major couple, these two characters had literally no personality. Zero personality. So anytime she was talking about their love story, which was most of the book because they are the more major couple, I was just bored to tears pretty much. The other couple was a little bit more interesting. They had more interesting personalities, but like, ugh. This book just was not it, in my opinion. I'm just really exasperated by this book because I just feel like Julie Berry should have and could have brought it with these characters. I did love the gods and goddesses. Like, I thought they were very well done, but the humans, I was just like, girl, why are we here? Like, where is the flavor? So yeah, at the time I gave it 4 stars, but like upon reflection, it's definitely more of a 3-star. Then we have Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I'm putting this in Old Woman Trying to Get on the Bus. This is another book that I really wanted to love because so many people on BookTube adore this book. And I love Leigh Bardugo. I really enjoyed, you know, the Grisha trilogy, Shadow and Bone duology. So yeah, I expected a lot out of this book and I DNF'd this around page like 65, I want to say, because I was so confused. I was so bored. And yeah, I wanted to love this and it just did not deliver for me. We have just a few books left, as you can see. I'm going to talk about Secrets of a Summer Night by Lisa Kleypas. This is going straight into the okay category. So this is book 1 in her Wallflower series, and I did go into this knowing that it wasn't going to be fantastic because even people that adore like everything Lisa Kleypas writes has said that this book is just not great, and it really wasn't. The pacing was so slow. I was so bored most of the time. I didn't love the main characters. I will say I love the 4 best friends that this series centers around, like the 4 Wallflowers themselves. I love their dynamic together. Their personalities mesh really well. They're really great friends, but the romance was just like, just very meh to me. And we have the Shades of Magic series by V.E. Schwab. This is going straight into A Potato Flew Around My Room. This series, y'all, okay, so I really enjoyed the first book, Darker Shades of Magic, or Darker Shade of Magic. Gave that one 4 stars. I really like the world that this takes place in, and if you don't know, this is by V.E. Schwab, who's also Victoria Schwab. This is a series that takes place, it centers around these 4 different Londons. We have Grey London, which is the world that we know. There's no magic at all. We have Red London, which is the London that Kel, our main character, is from. It is a world full of magic. It is thriving off of magic. Then we have White London, which is a magical London, but it's being torn apart through magical war. It is a very dark place. It is not a happy place to be by any means. And then we have Black London, which is a London that you can't even access anymore. Magic like completely destroyed that London. And so it was a very interesting premise. I really enjoyed book 1, but books 2 and 3, man, quickly went downhill. The second book, Gathering of Shadows, I was just like, why are we centering around this magical competition that has nothing to do with the main plot line? Conjuring of Light was way too long in my opinion, and I was just bored a lot of the time. So this series started off really well for me and very quickly went downhill. Then we have the Shatter Me series by Tahira Mafi. I think I'm just gonna put this in I've never been to Uvujavar. At the end of the day, this is a series that I just don't understand what's happening and why it's happening. If you go look at my Goodreads, I gave all of these books at least 4 stars. I think I gave all of them 4 stars. So it's weird because at the time I enjoyed them, but like immediately after finishing the series, I was just like, what did I read? What is this series? Like, honestly, what is this? Like, I mean, to tell you the basic premise, it's about this girl, Juliet, and this is in a dystopian world. Basically, she has this superpower where her touch can kill people. and it goes on from there. This is a very like messy series. So the 5th and 6th books like literally had the same plot. If you've read this series, like you'll know what I'm talking about. Like those 2 books like pretty much had the exact same plot. I'm just so confused, and so many people love Warner, who is Juliet's main love interest in most of this series, and I'm just like, he's kind of terrible, and like granted he has a tragic backstory, but like again, where's the flavor with him? Then we have Force of a Thousand Lanterns by Julie C. Dow. I think I'm putting this in the okay tier as well. So this is another villain origin story. I am like on a quest to find the perfect villain origin story. I adore Heartless by Marissa Meyer. By the way, if you're looking for recommendation, that is the origin story of the Queen of Hearts from Alice in Wonderland. It's an East Asian fantasy retelling of Snow White, essentially. And so we have our main character, Shifeng. She comes from a very humble background. She's a peasant, but she, throughout the book, worms her way into the Imperial Palace and eventually becomes the Empress of this kingdom through some very dark, magical ways. And I think what ended up disappointing me about this one, it's not a terrible book. Like I did give this 3.5 stars, but like it just ended up being meh for me because the pacing was off throughout the whole book. But also I wanted Shifeng to like really embrace the darkness, embrace the dark magic, like all of that. And I just feel like at the very end, things were happening to her as opposed to her being an active character. And that's just not intriguing to read about. We have Uzumaki by Junji Ito. This is a horror graphic novel bind up. I think I'm gonna put this in a potato. Flew around my room because I was really enjoying the first half. So this is essentially a very like episodic manga bind up about this city that is cursed and plagued by spirals. And I know that's a very weird premise, but there's really no other way that I can explain it to you without spoiling anything. I really enjoyed the art style. I loved the different stories that we were getting throughout the first half. Then in the second half, the stories got very repetitive because they were all about the same thing happening over and over and over again. And so I just was not engaged. I literally just ended up skimming to get to the very end because I didn't really want to DNF it at that point. I think I was at like the 75% mark. And last but not least, we have Wallbanger by Alice Clayton. I'm just going to put this in the okay tier. As you can see, most of these books went in that tier because a lot of my least favorite books of the year were just very meh and very boring for me. But this is book 1 in, I guess you would say it's more of a chick lit romance series. So this is a romance. I thought the premise was fun. It centers around this woman. She moves into a new apartment and the man that lives next door is having sex with a lot of women and like literally like banging up against her bedroom wall. And so she goes off on him and like that's like the main catalyst for this story. And it started off okay. Like, I don't know, I probably would have given it like a 3.5 stars, but this is yet another book that like towards the end, I just got more and more bored. I felt like this needed to be edited a lot more. And I just like didn't really care all that much about the characters. And if I don't care about the characters, like why am I reading this? And I think the only reason why I didn't DNF this was that I was listening to this audiobook while cleaning my room. And so it was just like something to listen to while getting cleaning done. All right, guys, that's going to be it for my tier ranking of my least favorite books of 2020. I would love it if you would leave a comment with the confused emoji. I'll put a picture of it over here if you got to this point in the video. I would also love it if you would tell me about your least favorite books or the worst books that you read in 2020. And I would love it if you would leave a like and subscribe, and I thank you in advance if you do. And with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!